The rain fell in sheets that October evening, turning the manicured grounds of the Ashford estate into a watercolor painting of grays and golds. Jonathan Ashford stood at the ornate iron gates, his charcoal overcoat already heavy with moisture, staring at the woman kneeling in the puddle before him. She was perhaps 30 years old, her blonde hair plastered to her face, wearing what had once been an elegant light blue dress, now torn at the hem and soaked through. In her trembling arms, she clutched a small boy, maybe 5 or 6, whose face was buried against her shoulder. The child's denim jacket was too thin for the weather, and Jonathan could see him shivering. But it was the woman's eyes that stopped Jonathan's breath in his chest. Even in the dim glow of the estate's lamps, even through the rain and exhaustion, he knew those eyes. He'd known them for 23 years. "Please," she said, her voice hoarse and desperate. "I don't need money, just... Can I clean your mansion for a plate of food? For my son. He hasn't eaten since yesterday morning." Jonathan stood frozen, his mind reeling between past and present, between the confident CEO he'd become and the 17-year-old boy who'd made the biggest mistake of his life. "Catherine?" The name escaped his lips like a prayer, barely audible above the rain. Her eyes widened in recognition, then filled with something that looked like shame. She clutched the boy tighter and tried to stand, her legs shaking beneath her. I didn't know this was your home. I'm sorry. We'll go somewhere else." But Jonathan was already moving, pulling off his overcoat and wrapping it around her shoulders. "Don't be ridiculous. Come inside. Both of you." His voice was rough with emotion he'd spent 2 decades trying to bury. He helped Catherine to her feet, and together they walked toward the mansion. The boy peeked out from his mother's arms, his blue eyes so like Catherine's, watching Jonathan, with curiosity rather than fear. Up close, Jonathan could see the child's lips were tinged with blue from the cold, his small hands clutching his mother's dress. Inside the grand foyer, Jonathan called for his housekeeper, Mrs. Whitmore, who appeared with the efficiency of someone who'd worked in the household for 30 years. Her eyes widened at the sight of the bedraggled woman and child, but she was too professional to comment. "Mrs. Whitmore, please prepare the blue guest suite. And have cook send up something warm, soup, bread, whatever can be ready quickly. And hot tea." He paused, looking at the shivering boy. "Do we still have those children's clothes from when my nephew visited?" "Yes, Mr. Ashford. I'll have everything ready in 15 minutes. As Mrs. Whitmore hurried away, Jonathan led Catherine and her son to the sitting room, where a fire already blazed in the hearth. Catherine sank onto the couch as if her legs could no longer hold her, still cradling the boy protectively. "What's your name, young man?" Jonathan asked gently, kneeling to the child's level. The boy looked to his mother for permission before answering in a small voice. "Oliver, sir." "Oliver, that's a strong name." Jonathan smiled, though his heart was hammering. "My name is Jonathan. You're safe here, Oliver. Both of you." Catherine's composure finally cracked. Tears began streaming down her face, mixing with the rainwater. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to see me like this. I never wanted anyone to see me like this." Jonathan pulled a chair close and sat facing her, his hands clasped between his knees. 23 years fell away in an instant, and he was 17 again, holding Catherine's hand in the back seat of his father's car, promising her forever, believing with all his young heart that love was enough. "What happened, Catherine? How did you—" He gestured vaguely, unable to finish the question. She laughed bitterly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "How did the girl who had everything end up begging for food at your gates? That's a long story." "I have time," Jonathan said softly. "I've had 23 years of time wondering what happened to you. Why you left without a word. Why you never answered my letters." Catherine's face crumpled with fresh pain. "Letters? Jonathan, I never got any letters." Before he could respond, Mrs. Whitmore returned with towels and announced that the guest suite was ready. Jonathan watched as Catherine was led upstairs with Oliver, who'd fallen into an exhausted sleep against his mother's shoulder. The boy's small face was peaceful now, trusting in a way that made Jonathan's chest ache. After they'd gone, Jonathan stood alone in the sitting room, staring into the fire. His mind spun with questions, with memories he'd locked away, with the weight of choices made by people too young to understand their consequences. He'd been 17, she'd been 16, summer before his senior year of high school. Catherine Brennan had moved to town with her family, and Jonathan had fallen for her, with the absolute certainty that only first love brings. They'd spent that golden summer together, making plans, dreaming dreams, believing they could conquer anything together. Then in September, she'd disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. Her family had moved away suddenly, and when Jonathan tried to find her, he'd hit wall after wall. Her parents refused to speak to him. Her old phone number was disconnected. The letters he'd sent came back marked "Return to Sender." His father had told him it was for the best, that he was too young for such serious attachments, that he needed to focus on college and building a future. Heartbroken and angry, Jonathan had thrown himself into his studies, into business, into becoming the man his father wanted him to be. He'd built an empire. Ashford Industries had grown from his father's modest manufacturing company into a tech conglomerate worth billions. Jonathan had married once, briefly, to a woman his family approved of. They'd divorced after 3 years, both recognizing they'd married for the wrong reasons. Since then, he'd devoted himself entirely to his work. And now here was Catherine, the ghost of his first love, soaked and desperate at his gates. 30 minutes later, Mrs. Whitmore knocked on his study door. "Sir, Mrs. Brennan and her son are settled. Cook has sent up a meal. The child ate everything and fell asleep immediately. His mother is requesting to speak with you if you're available." Jonathan found Catherine in the blue guest suite's sitting area, wearing one of the guest robes, her hair drying in soft waves around her face. She'd aged, of course. There were lines around her eyes, a weariness in her posture that hadn't been there at 16. But she was still beautiful, still the girl who'd made him believe in fairy tales. "Oliver's asleep," she said softly, gesturing to the bedroom where the boy lay curled under a thick comforter. "I don't think he slept in a real bed in a while." Jonathan sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Catherine, you said you never got my letters." She nodded, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "I didn't know you'd sent any until tonight. I thought you'd forgotten me. Or worse, that you were glad I was gone." "Glad?" The word came out more harshly than he'd intended. "Catherine, you were everything to me. When you disappeared, I was pregnant," she said quietly, the words dropping like stones into still water. Jonathan felt the world tilt. "Oliver," he whispered. "No," Catherine shook her head quickly. "No, Oliver is 7. This was before. That summer before I left, She took a shaky breath. "I was pregnant, Jonathan. I was 16 and pregnant and terrified." The room seemed to shrink around him. "What happened?" "My parents found out. They were horrified. Your father was this important businessman, and my father worked at one of his factories. They were convinced that if anyone found out, my father would lose his job, that we'd be ruined." Tears streaked her face again. "They told me you didn't want anything to do with me. That your father had paid them to make me go away quietly." Jonathan stood abruptly, his hands shaking with rage at ghosts from the past. "That's a lie. I never knew. My father never told me." "I know that now," Catherine said. "I can see it in your face. But then, I was 16 and scared, and my parents were so convincing. They sent me away to live with an aunt in Oregon. They said if I tried to contact you, your father would ruin us." "The baby?" Jonathan could barely form the words. "I lost her at 4 months," Catherine whispered. "A daughter. I was going to name her Hope." She wrapped her arms around herself as if holding that long-ago grief. "After that, I fell apart for a while. By the time I could think clearly again, years had passed. I'd convinced myself you'd moved on, that reaching out would just complicate your life." Jonathan sank back into his chair, processing decades of manipulation and loss. "My father died 5 years ago," he said quietly. "Did you know that?" Catherine shook her head. "Before he died, he told me he'd done some things he regretted." "Things to protect the family legacy," he said. "I wonder now if you were one of those things." Jonathan ran his hands through his hair, which was still damp from the rain. "God, Catherine, we were just kids. We could have figured it out together." "I know, but we can't change the past." She set down her teacup with trembling hands. "I moved back east about 9 years ago. Met a man, got married. Oliver's father. I thought I could have a normal life, you know? A second chance. What happened?" "He was charming at first. But after Oliver was born, he changed. Or maybe he'd always been that way. and I'd been too desperate for stability to see it. She pulled the robe tighter around herself. He drank. When he drank, he got mean. Not physically violent, but the words could cut just as deep. He made me believe I was worthless, that I was lucky he'd taken me in. Jonathan felt a fresh wave of anger at this man he'd never met. A year ago, I finally found the courage to leave. Took Oliver and whatever we could carry. But I had no job skills, no education beyond high school, no family who'd help. My parents had passed away and my aunt wanted nothing to do with us. Catherine's voice was flat now, reciting facts that had become her reality. I worked where I could, cleaning houses, waitressing, anything. But it was never enough. We moved from shelter to shelter. A few weeks ago, we lost even that. How did you end up here? At my gates? She smiled sadly. Would you believe fate or irony? We'd been sleeping in the park near here. Someone told me the big estate sometimes needed extra help for parties. That if I looked presentable enough, I might get day work. So I cleaned us up as best I could, and we started walking. She gestured to her ruined dress. This was the nicest thing I owned. Got it at a thrift store. I was going to knock on doors, offer to clean anything for a few dollars. Then the rain started. Oliver was so cold, and I saw your lights through the gates. I thought I'd beg if I had to, for him. I'd do anything for him. Her voice broke. I didn't recognize the estate. Didn't recognize you at first in the dark and rain. I was just desperate. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of lost years between them. I wrote a letter once, Catherine said suddenly. About 5 years ago. I'd seen an article about you in a magazine. Some business award. You looked so successful, so happy. I wrote you a letter apologizing for disappearing, trying to explain. But I never sent it. What right did I have to waltz back into your life with my problems? Every right, Jonathan said firmly. Catherine, we were in love. Real love, even if we were young. What our parents did to us, the lies they told, that wasn't our fault. But the consequences were ours to live with, she said. You built this empire. I built nothing. I'm not the girl you knew, Jonathan. I'm a homeless single mother who couldn't even keep a roof over her son's head. Jonathan leaned forward, his voice intense. You're a survivor. You left an abusive relationship to protect your child. You swallowed your pride to beg for food for him. You're still fighting, Catherine. That's not nothing. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm so tired of fighting. Then let me help. The words came easily, naturally. You and Oliver can stay here while you get back on your feet. I have more than enough room. I can't accept charity, Jonathan. She straightened her spine, and he saw a flash of the proud girl he'd known. I'm grateful for tonight, for the food and shelter. But I won't be a burden on your conscience. What if it's not about conscience? Jonathan asked quietly. What if I want to help because I care about what happens to you? Because 23 years ago, I loved you more than anything in the world, and maybe some part of me never stopped. Catherine stared at him, her eyes wide. Jonathan, you don't owe me anything. You don't even know me anymore. Then let me get to know you again. You and Oliver. He stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the rain-drenched grounds. I've spent 23 years building a fortune. I have this enormous house, more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But you know what I don't have? Purpose beyond the next quarterly report. Family beyond a few distant cousins. Someone to build a life with, not just a business empire. You're successful, Jonathan. You have everything. He turned to face her. I have nothing that matters. I traded everything real for everything material. And I didn't even know I was doing it until I saw you at my gates tonight. He walked back to his chair, sitting on the edge. Stay, not as charity. Work for me if that makes it easier. Help Mrs. Whitmore manage the household. Organize my disaster of a personal office. Whatever makes you feel like you're earning your keep. But stay. Give Oliver stability. Give yourself time to heal. And give me a chance to know who you've become. Catherine pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. Why? Why would you do this for me after everything? Because I should have fought harder for you 23 years ago. I should have questioned my father's story. Should have torn down every wall to find you. I didn't. I was young and hurt, and I gave up. He reached out, carefully taking her hand. Let me not give up this time. She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. Whatever she saw there seemed to decide something for her. 1 month, she said finally. We'll stay for 1 month. I'll work for you, really work, not just pretend to earn my keep. And at the end of the month, we'll see where things stand. For Oliver's sake, I need to be smart about this. I can't let him get attached to something that might disappear. Fair enough, Jonathan agreed, though his heart wanted to argue for more, for always, for the forever they'd promised each other as teenagers. The next morning, Jonathan woke to the sound of laughter. He followed it downstairs to find Oliver in the kitchen, helping Mrs. Whitmore make pancakes. The boy's face was bright with joy, flour dusting his nose, as the housekeeper let him pour batter onto the griddle. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford," Mrs. Whitmore said with a knowing smile. "Young Oliver here is quite the chef." Oliver turned, his grin wide. "Mr. Jonathan, Mrs. Whitmore is teaching me to make Mickey Mouse pancakes. Do you want some?" "I'd love some," Jonathan said, pulling up a stool at the kitchen island. As he watched Oliver carefully flip a pancake, Catherine entered, looking rested in borrowed clothes, simple, jeans and a soft sweater that Mrs. Whitmore must have found for her. "Mama, look! I made breakfast," Oliver called proudly. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, happy ones this time as she watched her son experience a simple morning of safety and joy. She met Jonathan's gaze across the kitchen, and he saw gratitude there, but also something else. Hope, perhaps, or possibility. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Catherine did indeed work organizing Jonathan's study, managing household accounts, bringing an efficiency to the estate that even Mrs. Whitmore appreciated. But more than that, she brought life back to the mansion. Oliver filled the halls with laughter, playing in the gardens, befriending the groundskeeper's dogs. Jonathan enrolled him in the local elementary school and watched the boy blossom with the stability of regular meals, a warm bed, and adults who cared about him. Evenings after Oliver went to bed, Jonathan and Catherine would sit in the library talking. They shared their stories, the years that had passed, the people they'd become. They were different from the teenagers they'd been, shaped by loss and struggle and time. But underneath, something essential remained. The ease with which they spoke, the comfortable silences, the way Catherine laughed at Jonathan's dry humor, and the way he found himself smiling more than he had in years. One evening, about 3 weeks into their arrangement, Oliver approached Jonathan in the study. "Mr. Jonathan? Can I ask you something?" "Of course, Oliver." "What's on your mind?" The boy fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. "My friend at school, Tommy, he has a dad, and he asked if you were my dad because I live here with you." He looked up with serious eyes. "I said no, but could you be? Like, could I call you that sometimes? If you don't mind." Jonathan felt his throat tighten. He knelt down to Oliver's level. "I would be honored if you wanted to call me that, Oliver, but you should talk to your mama first, okay? Make sure she's comfortable with it." That night, after Oliver was asleep, Jonathan found Catherine crying in the library. "He asked you about being his father," she said when Jonathan sat beside her. "He told me." "Jonathan, this is happening so fast." "I told myself I wouldn't let either of us get attached, but he loves it here. He loves you. And I—" She turned to face him, her eyes brimming with tears and something deeper. "I think I'm falling in love with you all over again. Or maybe I'm falling in love with who you've become. Or maybe I never stopped. I don't know anymore." Jonathan cupped her face gently in his hands. "I know I'm falling in love with you. With the woman who fought to keep her son safe. With the person who survived things that would have broken a weaker soul. With Catherine exactly as you are now. But what if I'm too broken? What if I can't be what you need?" "You're not broken," he said firmly. "You're healing. We both are. Catherine, we were robbed of our chance 23 years ago. Our parents made choices that weren't theirs to make, and we lost so much. But we're both here now. Older, maybe wiser, definitely scarred. But here." He kissed her then, softly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she leaned into him, and it felt like coming home after a long, exhausting journey. 6 months later, Jonathan stood in that same spot by the iron gates where he'd first seen Catherine in the rain. But now it was spring, the gardens blooming with color, and the woman beside him wore a simple, white dress and held a bouquet of wildflowers. Oliver stood between them, holding both their hands, his face split with the biggest smile Jonathan had ever seen. Mrs. Whitmore dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, and a small gathering of friends, watched as a minister pronounced them a family. I thou.